Kunos' Assetto Corsa Rally is set on being the definitive sim rally game, and it looks incredibly impressive, but it does have its work cut out for it. That's because the current title holder of the King of Sim Rally is over 20 years old now. Richard Burns Rally is seen by many as the greatest title out there. In this video, we're going to have a bit of a look at the game. We're going to talk about the state of it in 2025, and I'm going to give my recommendations on it. Starting off, Richard Burns Rally was developed by Warthog Games and published by SCI Games. Warthog Games had previously worked on the Rally Championship franchise, something that I love playing growing up as well. But it's the same case for Richard Burns Rally. For the longest time, I hadn't put two and two together and recognised that this was essentially a successor to games like Rally Championship 2000, which was amazing for the level of detail it had. It had stages that were, nearly 30 minutes long back in 1999 with 3D models for the British Rally Championship. Whilst the original Richard Burns Rally came with 8 different cars and 6 different rallies, I believe it technically counts as 37 stages including the rally school test. The main appeal of it was how moddable the game was, because if you have a listen to that kind of roster and then you compare it to the likes of something like EA Sports WRC, any of the other WRC games that are on the market at the same time, or even the predecessors made by Warthog Games, that doesn't sound particularly impressive. But what helped Richard Burns Rally keep going was the same kind of thing that's helped games like F1 Challenge keep going all the years down the line, which is the modding scene. The one that stands out above all is typically the physics engine, the NGP, Next Generation Physics, created by WorkerBee. That's currently in its 7th different iteration. And in addition to that, the use of engines such as Bob's Track Builder meant that you could have your own stages in the game as well. So, in terms of what's leading the market at the moment, right now, you could say it's the RallySimFans mod, the Hungarian modding team. I remember I did a video over on my other channel, Cavs Racing Encyclopedia, about 5 years ago, 5.5 years ago now even, where I talked about the mods that I enjoyed for Richard Burns Rally. And I remember back then, they were like, hey, come and try out this mod. At the time, I was actually phasing out of playing RBR and getting more into playing Dirt Rally 2.0. But, yeah, they just continue to develop further and further and further. And that is why so many people are still taking part in this, and it's got a higher player count than the likes of EA Sports WRC and a more dedicated fan base than most Codemasters Rally games for the past probably even 20 years. So while I'm talking about the stages and the cars, I'm not necessarily going to talk about the stuff that's in the base game, because not everything that was in the base game in terms of cars was carried over into the RallySimFans plugin because it wasn't ported over to NGP. But in terms of cars and tracks, you have hundreds of stages and dozens of cars available from a variety of different classes. All of them very well built, very well put together. Some of these ones are the base game ones. The base 6 rallies are all based on real rallies. Some of them in the European Rally Championship, some of them in the Asia Pacific Rally Championship. Some of the stages were WRC stages, either around the time, such as the Hokkaido stages that later were used in Rally Japan, or even were used in the future. The Arctic Lapland Rally got added to the WRC calendar in 2021, meaning that some of these names that you see, like Mustaselka, Otiavara, Kohervara, were all included in the WRC years later on. And what you see is some mods where people have put those more up-to-date versions that feature the WRC into the game as well. But in addition to that, you get some that are WRC stages, past or present. You get a bunch of different super specials, for instance. But the appeal as well comes from the cars. Because in terms of the cars that you do get the 1.6 litre World Rally cars. No Rally ones, because it's a whole thing about trying to figure out how hybrid works. Especially because the game only really catered to naturally aspirated cars or turbocharged cars. So the hybrid itself is a law unto itself. The main class that people use is Rally 2, but that is the main class that is used in the world of rallying at the moment anyways. but you can find daily stages that use World Rally cars from past and present, as well as the A8 and A7 cars, so the things that were prevalent in the 90s. But if you're looking for something a bit more classic, there are some Group 4, Group 2 cars, some Group B cars as well, if you want to relieve that gory day of rallying. And there's a dedicated fan base that put all of these into different rallies. And I think that is the aspect that means that RallySimFans has been so successful. Before RallySimFans, the people who were the leading different mod developers were the likes of RBRCZ, the Czech plugin, and RSRBR, the French plugin. I used RallySim, the French plugin, for a number of years, at some points picking up different championships in that system. But one of the things that RallySimFans allows you to do is have everything built within the game. And so you just load up the game and you can go, okay, I'm going to go into the online championship section. Oh, somebody's doing this rally here. Let's have a go at that. Let's see what that's like. And you can just load in the setup straight away. You can have a look at what's going on in the service park. The damage carries over, and it carries over in a really nice way as well, because it feels like the damage engine is a lot more comprehensive now. It used to be you hit the rear right, okay, you get to a service park, you can fix it. Whereas now it's like, okay, you broke the damper, you broke the shocks, you broke the springs, you broke the wheel hub. All of those things I have done since playing RBR more recently in this current phase of me playing it. So it means you get a more comprehensive idea of what damages are on the car and how it could interact with the car, how it can affect the car's performance. Something you don't necessarily get when you're playing the base game because, well, it was made 20 years ago. What's impressive is this builds on the engine that was already in the game. So it's essentially realising the potential that Warthog Games put into it when they developed it and released it back in 2004. But if you don't fancy jumping into the online championships, there are still a bunch of different modes available to you that could be fantastic as well. The Rally School has been updated to reflect NGP because the previous generation of physics, the pre-NGP physics, the base game physics, were a lot quicker. And that's something that has always taken me time to get used to, given how much I used to play on the original physics for the game, is how the NGP engine is a lot slower. It's pretty noticeable. It's usually an acceleration, but it's also then to do with how you handle the corners and how cornering behaves, really, when it comes to the car. But you can also do some offline practice, you can do some time trial, you can go up against some leaderboards. I've managed to beat Nikolai Gryajan on the Fraser Wells test. Granted, he was in a Rally 2 car and I was in a 1.6 litre Toyota Yaris WRC, but that doesn't really matter, does it? The other thing that remains from the base game is the championship function. And with that, the difficulties on sliders as well. So you can see what the baseline time is for Harwood Forest, which typically ends up being the first stage of your championship. And you've got 3 different options you can do as well. You could either do the 1.6 litre World Rally cars, or you could do the Super 2000 Intercontinental Rally Challenge cars, or you could do a Group B championship. And all of these have been really well put together. The AI is still very competitive, and it still has some of the things that you can expect from the original game, such as seeing that there is a 3% chance of rain, you go to the stage on dries, and the stage is flooded. But let's quickly discuss the handling. One of the things I like about NGP7 is it builds on things, especially things that I have previously said were criticisms of NGP 3, 4, 5 and 6, which I did have quite a bit of experience in. The main criticism I had of it was essentially, for those of you who have played iRacing, you'll know what I'm talking about, iRacing grass. iRacing used to have this thing where if you touched the grass and you braked on the grass, you were going backwards. It didn't matter what kind of thing you were going to be driving, it was just going to swap ends on you. And with NGP7, that is much less of a thing now. Now it behaves a lot more like I would expect, so you are more likely to lock the tyres, but it's not going to lock the tyres and immediately swap ends on you. It also feels like it's built more around a variety of different equipment. When I was last doing NGP, I was on a G29, and I found that I was being heavily limited by the hardware that I was using. Also, at that same time, I had just upgraded to the CSL DD. and it still felt like things weren't fully connected. Now it feels a lot better. NGP7 really fixes a lot of these issues that I had with the previous NGP engines. You can feel connected to the car, you can feel the forces going through the car, you can feel some of the forces through the suspension as well, but I believe those are things that you can tinker and tailor with in the settings if you're not too much of a fan of it. For me, it's a rally game, so what I like about the physics now is it is consistent with the other rally games I play, the likes of WRC. And I know people will criticise the handling model of WRC, usually to do with the sliding. It doesn't have the centre rotation thing the likes of Dirt Rally 2 have. But it is something that is good about NGP, is whilst it is more detailed, because it's been built up more over the years, and because there was a good foundation in there, than something that had to be designed for a more general audience and was forced through because EA, I'm planning on doing a WRC retrospective at some point as well. It means that I can just jump back into EA Sports WRC, get behind the wheel of a Rally 1 hybrid car, and then I could go off and do my daily stages in RBR, in a Rally 2 Yaris, or a 1.6 litre WRC Plus Yaris as well. And it just feels similar. It feels consistent, even though the NGP stuff is more detailed than what you'll find in the likes of EA Sports WRC. But let's quickly talk about the drawbacks for RBR, and it is limitations that are largely constraints that exist within the base game itself. So firstly, it is 20 years old. If you're somebody who's looking for cutting edge graphics, this ain't it. It looks good, and it especially looks good for its time. One of the great things that some of the mods and plugins that are in RSF does is that it allows you to have more updated graphics engines, rendering engines and stuff like that, so you can just make the most out of your graphics system. So for instance, for myself, it's a 4080. It means that I could just sit back and enjoy. I don't have to worry about, oh, am I going to run out of the RAM that the game has its self-imposed limit as? Or am I going to have to worry about any kind of frame drops? That's not been a thing for me either. Even when I've been recording at 1080p 60 for this video, I haven't had to worry about frame drops, which is always fantastic. If you've watched my review of Race Room, that's part of the reason why I praise Race Room so much, is because I could just get that consistent 100 FPS without any particular issue. Something that I can't find in iRacing, I certainly can't find in LMU or RF2. And it's something that, again, we're going to compare to WRC, I still occasionally struggle with in WRC. I usually have it at 60, and sometimes, typically around stage start and stage end, I'll find that it jumps down to 40 or 30, especially if I'm streaming, and even more so if I'm recording rather than streaming. But regardless, I've tried to put a bit of a spin on that. Some of the other limitations are still within the game itself, such as when it comes to things like surface changes, you don't have the ability to plan to the pace notes because the pace note engine is still built on what was originally in the game, which is completely understandable, but it also means that it's trickier because sometimes I'm like, okay, we're getting onto a tarmac section, or I'm in a tarmac spec car and we're about to hit some gravel. I need to know that because otherwise I'm going to go sliding into somebody's house and it's day done for me. But the other kind of restrictions that there are ones that I only think of because I spent so many years in the RSRBR system. And that is that there are more cars that were built around NGP that have not been ported over to NGP7. I'm really disappointed, for example, that the base game cars for RBR haven't been carried over. Some of them have, but for instance, in a game that is dedicated to Richard Burns, I know the Subaru was the cover car, and I know he was meant to drive for Subaru in 2004, but there's no Peugeot 206. There is a Ford Focus, but it's the final generation of Ford Focus, for example. I would love to have the 99 one. I'd love to have the Ford Escort in there. I don't even remember if the Toyota Corolla got carried across. But there were all of these wonderful cars that have been modded into RBR, and it would be great to see the mod makers give the permission, or RSF contact these mod makers for permission, go, hey, can we include this in the title? And quite possibly as well, if it needs to be ported across to NGP7, could we work together on getting some of the data in there so that it works within NGP7? Because one of the things I loved about RSRBR was I could chuck together, okay, these are the cars that are in the 2005 pack. I did do seasons in the 2003 pack over on CRE back in the day. But you can just go, okay, I want to run the 2005 pack. I want to see the Peugeot 307, the Skoda Fabia, the Customer 206, the Zara, the Impreza, the generations of Ford Focus that hit the stages as well that year. And potentially, I don't know, like the Accent. And then you could just go in and you could run a season on it. I like that there is the ability to run these different seasons, different functionalities, but I think for me, where I was spoiled for choice on the RSRBR system, I feel like that's still a restriction with RSF. But given that they're constantly putting out updates, new mods, new stages, new cars, I wouldn't be surprised if that's something that gets included in the future. So maybe a year from now, this suddenly sounds a lot more out of date. But the biggest criticism I have of this title, and it is probably one of the things that won't become out of date, because they have still tried to be as efficient as they can, is the storage size. This game, that is 20 years old, granted there has been so much modded content included in it over the years, is about the same size as Dirt Rally 2 or EA Sports WRC. It is over 100 gigabytes. When I think about some of the other older games that I've played or am playing to do content for this channel on, they're typically 1 or 2 gig at a maximum. I think Grand Prix Legends, even with the mods I had installed, was only 2 gig. GTR 2 was a couple of dozen, but that was because I had the reloaded part of it, I had the remaster, and I had so many different mods installed to try out as part of that video. But yeah, I was able to find the space. I had to uninstall a couple of other games, and the space that I managed to save I then used up recording this footage that you're seeing on the screen now. So it is something to bear in mind if you're looking at trying this out. Yes, it's free. Yes, there is so much detail in there, but you will need quite a bit of storage space if you want to make the most out of it. Regardless, it's time to talk about arguably the most important thing from this video, which is my recommendation. My recommendations, my thoughts and my feelings about this. I still love Richard Burns Rally, and whilst I expected that I might pick it up every once in a while after I'd reinstalled RSF for this video, I didn't expect that I would be sitting at my simulator for days on end, trying out every daily challenge, trying out various different championships with Group B, Group A, Group 4, Rally 2, WRC Plus, WRC 2 litre cars. But that is what I've been doing. I've been coming back to it time and again in a way that I don't with the likes of EA WRC. And the reason why is because the online facility is just so easy to put together. Granted, there are still things that I'll be critical of it for. For instance, the penalty system is quite strict. There are some corners where you can be told, oh yeah, you can cut this, and then you get an instant 5-second penalty. Now, with RSF, it had to be manually stewarded and verified. That's why I got a 1-week ban back in 2016, because I fell off the stage too many times in Northumbria, and they figured that I was trying to straight line the stage to get a couple of extra seconds in my Group B Peugeot, which I then promptly wrote off in the following stage. But regardless, I still love this game. It is still great. The people who are in this community and have been in this community over the years have done so many phenomenal things to make this still be considered the king. If I was talking to you just about the base physics, just about the base content, I would not be saying the same thing. As much as I have such a soft spot for it, it was my childhood playing RBR, it would still be a lot more dated if we didn't have the NGP. I'd be sitting here going, yeah, it's fun and I enjoy it, but also bear in mind it's not the most accurate of things. Whereas with RSF, at least until we see what the early access and hopefully full release of Assetto Corsa Rally looks like, you do have the finished product. There are things missing, yes. There are things that I wish were here that I've had in different engines that I've tried out over the years in RBR. But it is still great fun. It is still enjoyable. I still love playing it. And I think if you have 100 gig free on your computer, you will too. Either way, folks, I just want to thank you so much for watching and joining, and especially if you've watched through the whole thing, it means the world to me. If you did enjoy what I was talking about, do please hit the like button, it really helps me out. And if you want to stick around for more things to do with sim racing and sim rally, do hit subscribe. I aim to have a video out every week, and there's daily short content that comes out as well. Some of it is dissected parts of this video that are then repackaged in a short form format instead. Sometimes it's things like clips from my iRacing races or from some of the streams that I do around here. But I do want to just say a massive thanks, because we are, as I'm recording this, on the verge of hitting 200 subscribers, which when I started this back in May, I did not think was possible. The amount of views, the amount of watch time that's come through on recent videos, especially that race room one, I'm just so impressed. It's great to see so much discussion going on in there. I really hoped that I would get this video out a week or two ago, but I just ended up being incredibly ill. And so once I finished recording the gameplay, I was going to sit down and record the voiceover like this, and I could barely speak. Now I'm nearly 100%, but I didn't want you guys to have to hear me in the state that I was in. And especially for anybody who's new around here, I didn't want their first impression of me to be someone who was sniffly and coughing every 5 seconds. But thanks for watching, thanks for joining, thanks for your support as always. And until next time, it's bye-bye for now.